It is not hard. You have math, science, reading, writing, spelling, all of that's inclusive. If they're reading a book, they can highlight words in the book on a piece of paper that they don't really know, and that can become their own spelling words. We get books that say that they should know how to spell, but I can guarantee you when they start reading books, a lot of those spelling words that are on the level that we say that should be for them are probably not going to be in the reading book if they're an advanced reader. Because spelling books are given on a level of the grade that they feel like they should learn those words. You can be an advanced reader and struggle in spelling, meaning you can be reading books that are above your level and you still know how to read it, but you might not know what that spelling word means, but you could pronounce it, especially if you've had phonics, but you might not be able to spell it. So the best way is on the level that your child is reading. If there's words that they don't know and don't understand, you can actually have them start writing out words, and that can become their spelling list because they're already in a book and they need to know the definition of that word. But only they will tell you that it's a word that they don't know. Well, they don't have to come and tell you, I don't know what this word is, but I guarantee you they'll run across words that they don't know. But if you tell them, if you run across a word that you don't know, write it out.
They just changed the way of doing things drastically from what I learned. And I felt like the way we learned was a simpler, more straightforward, more digestible way, especially when it came to math. How do I assess what she needs to bring her up to the level I feel that she should be at?
You can give her tests for that. Every student that we had come in, we gave them a test, especially in math.
Okay.
Find out where they were and what their, weaknesses, areas that they needed to work on. But I understand what you're saying about having a child that has learned, and we talked about this before. I just think it's crazy that children learned, how to add, multiply, and divide, and then all of a sudden they are changing the way they divide, or it's a whole new concept. Then you have to buy a whole new book. You can't use the same book that you had before because now you're doing it differently. And moms and dads don't know how to do that because that's the way they did it. But you're coming to the same conclusion. You're getting the same answer, but the road to get that answer has been changed. It's different. And the concept is a lot harder. It's not simple anymore. You get the same answer in the end. When a child graduates, they need to learn how to do certain things, right? You need
Yes.
to learn how to graduate, and you need to know how to add, divide, right? You need to know how to get an answer to whatever problem you have. The reason that they need to do it a certain way is because somebody changed it and said that this is new and we want you to learn this way, but you're getting the same answer. If that way is confusing, which I think it is, I think a lot of children get caught up in all of the steps that they make you do to get to that, then I'm sure your daughter would be happy finding a simpler way to do whatever the problem might be. It's not that she has to learn how to get the answer. She just has to learn that there's an easier way to get the answer. Once the way is shown, you can use that same way for all the problems. So she only needs to learn the way one time, and then she can do the problems. So if you need to learn how to divide and they're showing you these 10 steps and you can show her 4 steps here, let me show you 4 steps, a way to get to the same answer, and it'll throw all that away. And you do it this way, you'll still get the same answer. I'm sure she'd love that. Who wouldn't?
So I would just need to give her like a standard test to see where she is academically, what she needs, whatever test that is.
No, I would test her per class. No, I wouldn't give her a standard test. I would
Per
give
per subject.
her subject,
Yes.
yes, not a holistic standard. Most of the curriculums that you use, you can actually get a test to see what level that they're on to find out what they actually know. If you want to do it that way, I would give her book at the level where she's supposed to be and let her work the lessons. And when she gets to a concept that she doesn't know, she'll let you know she doesn't know it. And if she thinks she knows it and she doesn't know it, when you grade it, you'll know she doesn't know it. It's just less work for you. You're going to come to the same revelation of knowing what she knows based on what she has. I mean, you could do it the other way, but it's not necessary. I mean, I wouldn't do it the other way. We did it with other students because they brought their children in and it made the parents feel better to be able to have when we had other students in. But my children, here's your book at the grade level you are, but I knew because they actually came up to those grade levels.
Mhm.
But if there was a concept in that level that I knew that they didn't fully understand, it shows up when you grade their papers. You're not getting an answer for something that you don't know how to do. They have to work the problem out. And you'll know that they'll either feel comfortable enough to ask you or tell you. And if they're not, you'll know it by when you grade it. Calculators should not be used. They shouldn't have that privilege, or their brain is not working. Write your little rules out so that everybody has a clear understanding. No calculus. Like, you're here to learn, to make sure that you know the concepts that you need to know. And if you don't know, it's okay. That's why you're here.
Would it be helpful for me to look up other homeschoolers in the area?
I wouldn't do that starting out. I would give myself time taking control of my school before I start incorporating other people into the plan that I have. Because I guarantee you, when you start mingling with other people, which you will at some point, everybody's idea will either become your own or would like to become your own. And your children don't necessarily need that distraction right away. They need to get acclimated to your system and settled in your system. And then that privilege will come at a later date. They need to get comfortable in your system and be at home. So no, I would not start looking that up at all right away. They will be fine. The funny thing is that for every parent that has taken their child out of school and moved their child to a different school, there was always a transition period. They didn't want to leave that school. They didn't want to leave their friends. They hated the idea, but nobody changed their mind. Parents still moved them around, got a new job in the military, got to go. You need to go to this school. They're moving you to this school because you're being bussed over here. Parents have no control over that. Nobody looks at that and says anything at all about anything. You just deal with it because it has to be done. So this is the same. The only difference is that you're making that decision. So it's harder for you to make it because you feel guilty about making it. Most people do, not you necessarily, but most people feel guilty about making it. It's like, oh my God, I'm doing. Yeah, you are, but you're doing it for your child's sake. A lot of the times we move children around, it's not for the same reason that we see we need to home educate. But actually, the reasons that we need to home educate are more important than the reasons that they're being moved any other time. But it's all about the perspective. We don't see it that way. If the school system said you can no longer have your child at X school, you need to go to Z school because we're splitting the school up and they're being bussed over here, and you have no say in that. You're going to have your child at Z school at the bus on the time that they need to go, when they say they need to do it, and you're going to buy whatever they need because they're telling you to do it. So if someone else can tell you what to do and you can comply, surely you can tell yourself what to do and comply. All about perspective. We let people tell us what we need, when we need it, how we need it, and how to do it, when to do it. We're good at that, being told, because we've been told for years. Our children have been in school underneath someone else. And now that you want to take them out, it's like, well, just do it. Set it up the way you want to set it up. And your children have to comply just like they would if they went somewhere else. They're not talking back. They might say, well, I don't really want to go. Well, you have to go. Well, why? Because this is the way it's been set up and you have to go. The state says you have to go, or whatever you tell them, you have to go. And they go. You don't give them any opportunity to push you around in that you make them go. But when it comes to homeschooling, we're like, well, I don't know. And they get to make rules and push you around and figure it out and whine about it. And I don't wanna, and it goes on for days until you just get sick of it. Well, I'm telling you, in the very beginning of it, treat it like you would treat anything else. If the state told you they had to go to this school, they'd go, and they transition, and you would put your foot down at some points, like, this is what you're doing, period. They have the same excuses. Well, I don't know anybody at the new school. And they'll tell you, well, I don't know anybody at our home school. Nope, you're right, you don't. But at some point, you'll connect. As you put forth effort in school, I will make sure that you have times where you meet up with your friends. You'll have free time. But right now, I need to see you working in this school, earning the privilege to do the things over here. Because when your child is transitioned into another school, you don't just dump them in that school and let them have their way and do whatever they want, go with whomever they want. You don't do that. You have boundaries. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they get grounded, they get something taken away. If they're too mouthy, you set rules. It's the same thing with home education. You set rules. and they have to follow those rules. You're the schoolmaster now. If we would just look at it from a different perspective, it would be so much easier. I wouldn't recommend curriculum because you really need to find something that's going to work for your children. Research on curriculum, but I personally just start at the library. So when you think about the things that we have to learn in school, depending on what grade they are, reading, writing, spelling, you can get a book and they're reading, they can write from what they're reading, and their spelling words can actually come from what they're reading along with vocabulary words. Social studies, what is social studies?
It's a lot of history.
Right. So, you can do history and pull social studies from history. Current events. Some things can just be assigned based on what you pull from the library. I mean, you could get a history book if you want to pay for a history book, and you can get a teacher's edition with that history book. You can certainly do that. Or your child can go read a book about history. If you look at a historical timeline, what part of history do you want to learn? Let's think of a history book. So we'll think elementary because it's quick in our minds and easy. So in an elementary history book, who do they learn about? Columbus. They learn about George Washington. But they only learn, if you remember what the history books look like, you'll learn a little story about that person and then have a few questions after you read that story to answer the question so you know a little bit about that person, right?
Right.
I am a proponent of wide and deep. I thought it was just a waste of time to tell somebody a little bit about somebody when you can tell them their whole life story. History, the way that it's put into the history books, you get a little bit about everybody, but not enough about anybody to really know anything. Instead of getting a little story about each one of these people, why don't you read a book about them and what they did? Because that is history. And then you'll learn so much more in that book, and that's just history. Give your child a book to read that incorporates all the people that are in the history book. Their timeline will fall in. Just give them a book. Have them, once they read that, write a book report. So there's your history. You write your book report. You've got your writing in there. They can narrate even back to you some of the most prevalent parts that they felt like were really important that hit them. Then you can have them take that book and pick out, I want you to find 10 vocabulary words in that book that you don't know the meaning of. Look it up, write it out, hand it in, and learn how to spell those words. You've covered, it's like a unit study. You've covered four classes in there: reading, history, writing, spelling, vocabulary words in one book.
I guess some people would think, okay, well, we'll go deep on one person with one person, but they need to know about all these other people
We're
because
not talking about what other people think. We're talking about your school. Let's just say your child is in sixth grade and you want them to read about 6 people that you feel would be important enough for them to read about in history. And that child also writes a report on each person, narrates back to you the book, can give a written report, oral report, and then write out spelling words and vocabulary words. And they do that with 6 books over the course of, let's say they read one a month. I mean, which they can actually read more than one a month. But let's just say they read one a month. So in 6 months, your child will run into one of your relatives or friends and they ask him, hey, how's school going? Great. So tell me, what have you learned? Well, I learned blah, 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 blah. Oh, they read the book and they've got a book report. So
right.
you know they understand. They've heard it, they've read it, they've heard it, they've written about it, and then they've taken the spelling words and turned them into vocabulary words. I guarantee you that information is inbred in their brain. Right. And they will not forget it. And you've got 6 important people in the timeline of history that your children have wrote about and can talk about on an adult level. As opposed to, let's read one page about Abraham Lincoln, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions at the end of that, and then you write about it. And I guarantee you 6 months down the line, they can't tell you what they read or what they wrote, other than the fact that they know something about Abraham Lincoln. There's a difference in teaching that way, in going deep. It's the way adults learn. It's the way that we gather information. in several aspects when we're reading and we talk about it. If I read a book and I tell you what I read about it, it sticks with me because I'm really engrossed in that. Now, children are not naturally engrossed in that history, but the way to get them engrossed in their brain is to give them those different concepts, make
Right.
them write about it, make them read about it, make them write, make spelling words about it, make them make vocabulary words, learn the definition. So you're giving it to them in their brain. They're taking it in, but it's not the natural way for them, but they're receiving it anyway. It's the way to teach. It's the way to learn. I believe strongly in reading, because if you're reading it and you're writing about it and you're gathering information about it and then you're reciting it back to someone, you're telling them what you actually got from that. It's just in your head. And imagine 6 of those. That's your history. Just give them a book.